Hello everyone, happy full moon. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. This month I am just kind of cocooning and wanted to give you an Ascension update. So today we have the Gemini Full Moon, which is about movement, about clarity, and conversations of breaking this mental loops that we have. Gemini illuminates the mind. The stories that we tell ourselves, our thoughts that we often repeat, the identities that we try on. So when this is at its peak, things that were half spoken or half understood, maybe you kind of vaguely remember things, are suddenly showing themselves in fullness. So this full moon is really an invitation to see our patterns more clearly and honestly, to speak our truth. What are the things that we've been kind of avoiding and releasing those old narratives, right? Processing these informations instead of getting tangled with it. So across from it is Sagittarius, the sun, and this is the archetype of meaning, direction, truth, and long vision. So there's this tension of the Gemini that is asking, like, what am I thinking right now? What am I creating right now? And then Sagittarius is asking, what path am I walking to? So together they create this contrast, or like a mirror, right? Your moment to moment thoughts between your long-term vision, your direction, versus your small stories that meet your bigger purpose, if that makes sense. Your question meets your worldview. And the things that we ask ourselves, the questions that we probe within ourselves, it's really important because it's how we can really open our ways of seeing the world. It's how we can really see a broader way of how we navigate our lives. So your question meets your worldview. The other mutable signs, such as Virgo and Pisces, these matter because they represent our transition, our flexibility, adjustment, and what we are ready to release. This is the point where something must adapt, not break or collapse, but to shift instead. So Gemini, Sagittarius, Virgo, Pisces, these four signs describe the four ways you learn to let go so that we can start moving on to bigger visions, bigger systems that we are creating for ourselves. So this full moon really brings that into focus. And for us, in a human grounded way, where we really start to notice, like, what were the stories that I inherited from my family, from my ancestry, which are the memories that we still kind of replay within our lives, which identities are you still clinging to, and what are the truths now that you are ready to revise? What are the things where my mind is often anxious? We often experience anxiety because we lack information or we're too ahead of the future. So where is our mind kind of moving faster than your body? And where are your beliefs that you've outgrown from your past already? There's actually quite a lot of closures happening, especially with family right now. And some of the things that has been kind of online and alive within the field, within the grids right now, we're kind of tying these loose ends before we really step into a whole new era, because it's a pretty big deal moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. It's a whole new operating system. So I want to also touch about grid working, right? And I want to talk about Europe first. As you know, the Winter Olympics will be held there at this point in time, and it's very significant. Europe represents the heart of the planet. In this context, it's not really about emotions or love, but more about the rhythm and pulse. This has something to do with time and space. This is the constant beating that keeps everything moving and alive and aligning with the greater cosmic space and time. So Europe's task is to connect everything in the world and using what exists and then producing something new, taking it to the world and receiving it back and producing new things again. There's this cyclical nature of what this land is supposed to be doing with the collective. So historically, Europe has been this place that most of these biggest changes in the world have occurred. and it affects the entire globe since the beginning of humanity. Europe has some of the first native people connected to the planet in the expansion of humanity. They were the first keepers of the connection of the spirit of the earth. Europe has this very unique geography with its tiny delineated territories that has really helped in the development of the mind and the heart. That was main focus was for ascension and going deep rather than just expansion. This led to the birth of philosophy and art in small isolated spaces. Europe's current task involves connecting ancient roots going back 5,000 years and understanding the power of its lands and the traditions of the first people who lived in these tiny mountains, in the valleys, and going beyond the modern countries, religions, and traditions. So Europe, especially if you have Celtic lineages, English, by unifying different countries, religions, and languages into one union, it's kind of like this key player in bridging the Rainbow Bridge or the Rainbow Nations. It's demonstrating how these diverse elements can come together. Europe represents the mind and keeping to find systems to connect every part and complementing these cultures that connect with the roots of the planet. So the Alps are considered Europe's most powerful and sacred places because of their unique geographical formation. Millions of years ago, the Italian peninsula, originally part of Africa, pushed northward, creating more of these volcanoes, locking in inner seas in the middle of Europe. This ancient sea was a deep valley that held encoded information from all of Europe's rivers. When Italy continued to push, this sea rose to become the Alps, transforming that energy of Mother Water or Mother Earth of the skies, opening this powerful portal. A lot of the very ancient codes of the very first humans were frozen in time in these waters. This makes the mountains spanning Italy, France, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Austria, Slovenia. These are one of the most holy and important places of the continent because it forms the heart of the planet. Any global gathering on the land is never just an event, it is an activation of the planetary rhythm. And so when we hold the Winter Olympics, takes place in Italy, especially in the Alpine corridor, something very old begins to come alive beneath the surface. And again, this is not just about sports, it is about the convergence, breath, and the pulse of time that is gathering itself. The Olympics brings in nations, stories, cultures, and ancestral currents into one shared field. When this happens on ordinary land, it is simply a ceremony. But when it happens, let's say on the Alpine axis, the most sacred spine of Europe, it becomes a synchronization. So the Alps here are not just memory of water that rose into the mountains where the undersea valley becomes sky. This is really where the mother water transformed into mother stone. This rising of the deep into the heights is what makes the Alps a portal, a space where these old codes start to resurface again, a place where the timelines can open up. So when the Olympics are held there, that means that the heart of the planet is inviting the world to breathe together through language, through presence, and we're harmonizing this rhythm within our hearts again. Thousands of bodies are arriving there, millions of eyes watching from different places in the world. This is a collective focus that is directed towards the same point on the grid. So it becomes kind of a coherence. We are connecting the nodes of the planet, and this coherence awakens memory. The Italian Alps especially carry the ancient imprint of the peninsula that once drifted from Africa and collided with Europe. This created a union between the continents, between worlds, between the root and crown of the planet. So when the global community gathers there, the earth is really waking up, remembering this unity that we used to have, and remembering the ascent, remembering the bridge building. This Olympics is not necessarily political. It's very rhythmic and timed. It is the heart signaling a reset, and Europe is being asked to return to its ancestral function as a connector. So this winter games are actually kind of like a tuning fork, calling the mind of Europe back to its pulse it once held. So when the Olympic flame is lit in the Alps, it is the human mirror of the planet sparking, rising from the deepest memory of Europe. It's remembering the Alps were once this ancient sea lifted into the sky, and fire above stone that once held this water, and light touching what once rested in the dark. This torch repeats this story in a very symbolic form, and basically igniting a new mind, a new consciousness within us that was frozen in time, frozen within these waters. When we light the torch on these lands, it awakens the primal pulse of the continent. The flame becomes a signal through the grid, and it's saying that the heart is beating again and we need to pay attention. This is inviting every nation to be present, to stand inside the same field of ignition and use the flame as a remembrance, the wisdom, the ancestors of Europe that once gathered around these fires to synchronize a lot of the tribes, the seasons, the migrations. So this Olympic torch is reactivating these ancient functions in a modern form. And it is essentially the opening of the higher mind portal. So the flame is not only heat, it is a frequency. And it marks the moment when the heart of the planet is saying that I am ready to be fully seen. When the torch rises, the land beneath it exhales and allows the world to enter its rhythm. Fire is the element that resets the timeline. The moment the torch is lit, the global attention unifies and millions watch the same plane, so we all get harmonized. When that attention touches the alpine stone, this coherence amplifies. So this Olympics is going to be held in Cortina and also in Milano for 2026. So that combination is incredibly symbolic in the planetary field. Cortina sits inside the Dolomites. This is the mountain range that carries one of the clearest crystalline frequencies in Europe. These mountains are sometimes called the Pale Mountains because they were formed from ancient coral reefs, and it was kind of lifted in the sky. And think of it like an oceanic memory rising into the heavens, a record of the ancient earth explored in stone. When this torch is lit there, the flame touches the memory of these primordial waters and early life. And Milano, on the other hand, this is the city of commerce, mind, artistry, exchange. And this crossroads for centuries is a place where ideas pass through the European heart with force, with precision, the mastery. It is the mind of the continent expressing itself through design, architecture, industry, innovation, and the Renaissance. During these games, it bridges Milano and Cortina, and this is what the energy is telling us, that the mind and the mountains are being synchronized through the memory, innovation, and ancestry to pass the torch to the next generation. Commerce and sacred terrain. This is like the modern pulse of Europe meeting the ancient pulse of the earth. It is very symbolic because these two places mark different corridors. Milano rests in the Great Northern Plains while Cortina rises towards the sky, and together they form a vertical axis, and earth to sky, body to spirit, root to crown. This alignment means that the Olympics will not only activate the alpine field, they will open a channel that connects the practical world, the higher wisdom, higher mind of the human systems within the deep geological memory held within the Dolomites. This is what grid working is. This is what the Buddha, Yeshua, was also doing when they were here. And now it's our turn to do this as well. It is a recalibration, almost like we serve as the tuning fork, a reminder of how the heart of the planet pulses when our mind and memory are working together. So some of the lineages that are really getting activated right now, if you have Italian, English roots, Welsh, Dutch, Greek, French lineages, you're all experiencing these activations because what is awakening now are the lines you carry from the old continental memory to the parts of Europe that once functioned as these keepers of rhythm, myth, a lot of the movement migrations they had, and the weaving of these worlds. So Italy, I also have a little bit of Italian roots. My great-grandmother was Italian, and Portuguese and Spanish. Italy is activating the heart of the planet, and Greece is activating the mind that remembers the old architectures of consciousness, the higher mind. France is activating the lines of these initiates, the ones who held the mysteries in plain sight. Wales, England are activating these dragon lines, the ley currents, and this old bardic breath. Netherlands, it's activating a lot of these sea memories, the reclamation of land, and the tension between water and matter. So these are the pan-European roots, the one that kind of predates the nations and languages. It is lived in these tiny valleys in the Alpine passes, a lot of the ancient plains before history really divided itself, the one that we felt in our blood, in our bones, and the stone from our ancestors and the sky as witnesses. These ontological systems live within us. So the activations that we are kind of sensing now is not just cultural, it is continental. It is the awakening of the old bone memory of Europe. And so a part of the grid that has been dormant while other continents carried a lot of these weight and the planetary transformation. So when there is a lot of this awakening and stirring in Europe, every descent, if you have a lineage there that carries a thread of these early frequencies, is feeling a lot of this vibrations now. So that is Europe. Let's talk a little bit about Asia. I know there's a lot of earthquakes happening. There's a lot of volcanoes erupting. My line, I have a lot of line in Asia, but a little bit in Europe, kind of all over the place. I've been here forever. It's not my first life, and I remember a lot. So I'm able to kind of translate the macro and the micro things. So let's talk about Asia. Sorry, I'm just like kind of going through it, rambling. I often see a lot of geometries. I see a lot of connections. When I'm weaving, I'm connecting each node, and hopefully I can translate this properly, because a lot of times I get almost like essences. They're just frozen image and it holds all of the information. Like when I get a download, it's just geometry, like cymatic, and packed with so much information. And so when I get this download, I would stretch it and compartmentalize it, and it's how I can translate these things. But you really need a huge bandwidth and kind of zoom out, like how do I understand these things, right? But it will come naturally as you switch your operating system. It's almost like you're reading a more sophisticated, instead of reading from a CD-ROM, you are now reading kind of a high-speed data. So you get a download, like a huge, massive PDF of things, and you're like ChatGPT that can just breeze through it and read within seconds. That's the difference between you going through Ascension, because your sense perception is really getting widened. You have faster processing. And a lot of people right now feel very bogged down. There's a lot of overwhelm happening because you are still using the old operating software. We will eventually all be moved into this faster OS, which I'm actually launching my base 12 masterclass, and this holds a lot of the sequences, blueprints of these new Earth intelligence. So again, going back, let's talk about Asia, right? I'm from Southeast Asia, Philippines. This is Gaia waking up. Most of these volcanoes will continue to erupt because the lands are renewing itself. And Asia especially is in the ring of fire. Earthquakes and eruptions are natural cycles. They are movements of pressure, heat, kind of plates shifting as the body of the planet is adjusting itself. These events are not to punish humans, but they are a transition. They are part of the ancient breath of Earth. They are part of this ancient cycles of the Earth. And we always go through evolutions and cycles so that the land renews itself. When I say that Gaia is waking up, don't imagine it as, end of the world. It's just being stretched after a long stillness. It's kind of, she's been in a slumber and she's stretching her arms. The land in Southeast Asia has always been alive and volatile, volcanic, oceanic, the neural networks of Gaia. She renews herself, and this has been her cycles. This is something ancient and cyclical, because nature is cyclical. But something has changed within the field. If you feel it, you are tuned to the ancestral memory of the islands and this rising of the sea, kind of like us being the guardians. So the movement that is happening in Southeast Asia, they are energetic as well as geological. So the land is carrying a lot of these old codes of water, fire, migration, and resilience. Again, like these ley lines and grid lines are connecting within each other. And these islands have birthed civilizations that understood these cycles of creation and destruction long before history was even written. And a lot of these codes are held within the genetics of the first humans, right? And now we're kind of awakening these memories. We're remembering a lot of the things that our ancestors had. So when Earth shifts there, a lot of the human collective also feels this as a reminder of impermanence, a reminder to return to our alignment. More volcanic activity or earthquakes are living processes, and they unfold according to physics. You feel them as part of this renewal. You're going through death and rebirths within yourself too, because that is what the planet, your land, your ancestry, when you came here at a certain place, certain geographic, for a certain reason, because it is part of your soul's assignment. And in a way, a lot of these old systems are getting disrupted now, the governments, communities, because we are remembering the original blueprints of nature when there was no separation. Earth, Gaia, she doesn't warn us, but we kind of understand, and our bodies just feel. We don't just have 5 senses. We are very sensitive. We are like the birds. The bird knows when it's time to migrate. Animals know where they should go. And same way, humans also have that innate instinct. Southeast Asia carries the fire and water. It carries the memory of these ancient migrations. If you've had memories of Lemuria, Atlantis, these first voices of the Austronesian people spreading across the oceans, they were guided by the stars. And when the land moves, it kind of echoes those ancient pulses. One of the things that they really have been teaching me a lot is about families, the family's karma. It's something I've been clearing a lot. It's been painful. It's also a learning experience, and just really understanding our roots, understanding my family. I hold a lot of reverence for it, because our family, our lineage, our heritage, they're all frequencies. Family really is this energetic sense. It's not necessarily the people who raised you, but it is the chain of consciousness that you have descended from. The architecture of memory that has formed your instincts, a lot of the reasons why your soul chose this body, this time, this place. Lineage is the genetic lines of your ancestors, the echoes of their choices, their sorrows, their sacrifices, their resilience that has, sometimes they have unfinished stories, and also the blessings and gifts and their strengths, right? And so that gets passed on to every generation. It is the shape of the wounds that move through a bloodline and the shape of the gifts that you receive when someone finally turns inward with awareness, when we heal those karmic contracts within our family. Heritage is the inheritance of meaning, not necessarily objects or land titles, but the frequency that anchors you to a larger story. These are the family codexes, and each family has a codex. This is like a living library or a web of interconnected geometries of your family. So it determines how your love moves. You know, some family have a lot of wealth codes, they have power codes, they have wounds presence, they have gifts that are ready to get awakened, identities that are shaped. Like, it's there unless like somebody activates it in the family line. So you might have had an uncle who was very good at business, or your grandpa was, you know, he knew how to create systems just like my grandpa did. So as the present daughter or son, you can activate these things. Most people live inside their codex without even knowing it. They reenact a lot of the fears, the same conflict, the same roles that their family or, you know, whatever trauma that they had, but that's why we heal it, so we can activate the gifts. Sometimes they also marry the same archetype. If you've been running this abusive or addiction patterns, like that gets passed on to the next generation, to the next, unless somebody really breaks it. So they run kind of the same shadow unless it's illuminated. They carry emotions that did not begin with them, but they think these things are their personality, but they are echoes of deeper architecture. And you can always change it. It's what I do with my clients when they come to me. I help them reconfigure their architecture and clean it up. So yeah, only a few in any lineage sometimes ever see the codex directly. So think of this kind of, your codex is like the library of gifts and traits of wealth. For example, I came from a family of system thinkers. Like, we were land keepers, we were stewards that created these ecosystems in harmony with the planet, intelligence, a lot of the honor, virtues, like these traits that my grandparents passed on to me, my grandpa, my dad. All of these things, we get to keep it and activate those gifts. Talking more about the different layers of the family codex, which I think I'll be activating more families. I'm currently working on 3 families right now, but I really love doing ancestral work because it's like a vast history of who you are as a person, and you know, just I love deep diving within these things. So the first layer of these family codexes, there is the stories that people tell us, and then there's kind of this lower layer, hidden layer, that the truth kind of protects itself, or what are the truths that we're repressing within our family. And then there is the ancestral scripts, the ancestral layer, the patterns that has been repeating for centuries within our families. So as for me, for example, I'm standing and holding reverence of the ancestral layers of my family because I finished collapsing my own personal karma, and now I'm going deeper into my ancestral and family. This is where you can really start collapsing your 1,000-year lives. The web grows and grows, and you're kind of unlocking these different nodes, or think of it like different folders of your family. These hold a lot of the gifts, and through that, when you observe these libraries you're able to illuminate and light up within your genetics. These hold the living blueprint that once in the lineage might have had a trait that is ready to be activated within you. And so the entire structure begins to really shift, and the geometry of your family system really starts to move. So if you've been feeling like, oh, my family's been stuck in this like broke mentality, it can be changed when we sort through whatever karmic needs to be addressed there. So when it comes to wealth, stewardship is really about responsibility and not ownership. It is the choice to care for something because you value it, not because you want to control it. Wealth, in the most grounded sense, is about resources that support a stable and meaningful life. It is the wealth that is built through our behaviors, opportunities, skills, and systems within our family. It grows when you start to manage risk, develop strength, and make choices that support your long-term well-being. So if your grandpa was good at business, if your grandpa was, at war and he was, I don't know, some general, like, you can have those traits also, because wealth includes non-financial assets like knowledge, relationships, reputation, and your health. Wealth is not just the money sense, it's really the virtues and characters that your family had. That is what will create you more wealth. Legacy is the imprint that you leave behind, and it is not predetermined. It is shaped by your actions, your choices, and the ways that you really treat people. Legacy can be financial, but it is also just as powerful emotionally or culturally. A legacy forms from the steady accumulation of what you value over a repeated time. So family patterns influence these things, but they don't have to control them. So for example, if your parents or ancestors may have had their own struggles with land, money, or responsibility or power, once you understand those influences without being governed by them, you can honor your lineage and really start to take off the burden of the family. So why am I saying all of this? This is because we need to understand our place in the world, to understand our inheritance and your responsibility, because your role in the long chain of families are the world that you live in. So who your family is who you are. If you want to change who you are, if you want to change the family dynamic systems in the future going forward, we have to heal our past. Every thread that we pull from Europe to Asia, from ancestors to different lands, these codexes are about stewardship. These are all circling around one central truth, which is that we are here trying to understand who we are becoming and how we are shaping the world in the future, because we are the new architects now. And so this kind of responsibility has to be held with so much respect, with so much reverence, and has to be forged in hardship so that you understand the weight and the gravity and the value of these things to keep its sacredness. When you're appointed by Source, when you're tasked to awaken these lands, you can really do some damage. It's not just that Gaia is shifting herself, like, there's emissaries here, the chosen ones that have come back to activate these lands. It's how we know these things. So grid working, again, is what Yeshua and Buddha did. And for me, next year, I'll also be stepping more into my Christos mission, my divine mission. By next year, I'll be 33, my Christ year. It is an honor to be handed down this responsibility. It's hard, but there is plenty of support out there for us if you're also in this ascension path. And I just want to honor my family, my ancestors, for everything that they've sacrificed for us to be here. One of my big tasks is to really connect the network wherever you are. If you're watching this, we are doing grid work together just by discussing this. and me putting it online, this identity as a collective, and soon this torch will be passed on to the next generation. We are really trying to build meaning out of memory, intuition, and experiences to affirm that our inner knowing is not just random, but to ground this sense that your life is part of something bigger. This is about coherence, leadership. For many of us, maybe feel called to step up next year and be initiated to take the role. If you're listening to this, you also have a role, you have a big role, and you are appointed by Source and all of these councils to do your part, why you came here to Earth. Before, I would just say, oh, you know, I'm just a small island girl from the Philippines, like, I'm not that special, but you would be surprised like how much you can do for the planet, for your family, and collectively. Again, we could do so much more when we're doing it together, because this isn't our first life. We've had many lives. We too will be the ancestors of future generations. Families are interconnected systems, and one affects the other. It's something I've been really working on with my clients as well. It can get complicated sometimes, untangling these family systems and the karma that is involved, but this is how families can really elevate and not have to suffer so much. And I've done it with my family and healed. So if your family is going through a lot of these shifts, if you're going through it personally, a lot of times it's these energetic things that needs to be cleared out so that things can start flowing a lot more seamlessly in your life as you transition to whatever you feel called to. If you are interested in learning more on how to create generational wealth, I wrote up an article about my family's lineage. You can sign up for my newsletter. It is free. I talk about how my family created systems, how we survived 5 generations through preserving these ecosystems that our grandfathers, grandmothers have built. I have my quantum resonance architecture, which is my one-on-one sessions. I'm changing a lot of my courses for next year, so stay tuned for that. Really excited because I just reawakened a lot of my Taoist alchemy stuff from my mother's side too. I will also be sharing my new systems beginning January or February. I'm hoping that I can release it all together. I'm really excited because these are really the codes and wisdom that my ancestry has shared with me, and I'm super excited to share it with you. Again, thank you for watching. I hope that this resonated with you. I'm sharing a lot of frequencies and codes here today. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.